Hello, everybody. This is the Elevate Your Best podcast. I'm Bruno Martins from the Cyber Journey.
And this is Michael Danklos from Elevate Your Best. Today, we're going to talk about commitment. Commitment to me is that one stage after preparation. It's when you're really digging in and deciding where you want to go.
We kind of talk a little bit about commitment on last episode, right, Michael? When was the right time to go from like preparation to commitment?
Absolutely. So we did kind of touch on that, and they are very much flow back and forth as far as different pillars that I work on in my coaching with my coaching clientele. Commitment is whenever you are stating where you're going. If that commitment is to yourself or your commitment to other people, it's really saying is this is the destination I'm going, and I'm going to collect together all the things I need in order to accomplish that particular task by a particular time. So, and generally this commitment is something that is based on very measurable facts. So this particular action by this particular time, because this then leads into the next pillar, which is accountability. How do I know what to hold you accountable for unless I know the destination of where you're going and by the time that it's going to be done? So if I say I'm going to pick someone up at a particular time at 5 p.m., if I show up at 5:30, I did not meet that commitment. If I'm going to actually finish this editing job for this thing by this particular time, and it's 2 weeks later, I did not fulfill that commitment. And the reason why I put preparation first is because I don't want to make a commitment without knowing what I'm committing to. I don't want to pack the car after I've left the house. I'm on this journey and I know at least what I need to pick up. I know what skills I need to have. I know what materials I need in order to fill that, if I have them or not. Inventory is generally going to be taking maybe in the preparation stage of what I have already, but it's more important to me on knowing what I will need to take the next step. And then I can go take inventory of what I have, and then what I need to create, what I need to collect, who I need to talk to in order to take on that next phase.
This reminds me a lot of strategic planning, Michael. You are a vice president in a company where you manage things. I had my experience managing things as well, and I learned a little bit about strategic planning. That is a very interesting relationship because in strategic planning, you do a study, you kind of go out there, you try to understand what is available in the scenario, what are the tools that you can use. You establish a problem that needs to be solved, and people raise ideas and you start committing to ideas that might bring predictable results. It might be because somebody has an experience about that point. Maybe they already went into that journey and came back and they know a little bit about the way, what we should expect, how we should prepare. And then there is the accountability part where we set some measures, some key points, key performance indicators, KPIs that people say, where we are going to be measuring those things. So somewhere into this strategic planning, it is a place where there is the commitment. There is several ways where we do the commitment. We need to commit to a purpose that is the question that we are proposing to solve a challenge. And there might feel the urge of ideas popping out and not being related to that purpose. We need to put them to the side. This is a commitment. And we need to commit with the thing that we are going to say, like you said, about video editing and being present at the time. Two things that, okay, I said I'm going to do this. Now I need to commit to this. I like really much this approach, Michael, because it makes me think that your idea of planning a life for the person, this idea of those 4 pillars, they are related to methodologies used in the market, like in companies, because companies, they are wise, they have systems.
Absolutely. And there's several different systems is why I kind of took some of those pieces from, if you're talking about the 4 disciplines of execution, if you're talking about OKRs, objectives and key results, each of them requires some level of planning, some preparation to know where you're going to go. What problem are you going to solve? And then you don't need to know the how when you commit to it. That's actually part of the commitment phase is you're learning the how. You're learning the what and the why you want to create it, why you want to commit to it, why you want to get to that destination. And then once you start in the process, once you've committed and you're taking action, you learn the how on the way. You at least need to know the potential resources you need, the people or the skills or the actual physical materials to create it. And that's when you start learning the how. If you start with the how, you're going to get lost. Even if we're talking about Simon Sinek says, start with why, because the how is a killer. Once you've actually set that commitment, these are the this is the destination I'm going to go to, and you start setting actionable routes you can get there, then you start looking at accountability. You can't hold somebody accountable till you know the steps that you want to take. If it is talk to this person, if it's learn this skill, if it's build this model, if it is create this piece of work that's going to end up getting us towards that destination.
Now I have a question for you, Michael.
Sure.
I have a question for you. The person, the day-to-day person, I don't know if that's the way to say it, but the average person in the world, won't they hear this conversation and ask themselves, isn't this an overkill? Like, why should I care to so much planning, preparation, commitment, accountability? Why? Why don't you just live life?
So for me, I want to live an intentional life. I want to actually be heading in a particular direction. I enjoy the process of getting there. Certainly, there is this opportunity to live life along the way, if you will, because the journey is really important. But at the same time, I don't want to react to everything, because that's where I end up being in a place that I don't want to be for reasons that I don't want to be there. That's why this intentionality, even if it is, especially whenever you have family, friends, or kids, or you work in a job, any of those areas are where you are showing by example the actions that you're taking. And if you're not doing that intentionally because of knowing the person of who you are and how you show up, that's why this is so important. Even if it is that commitment of, I'm going to pick my kid up from the bus right on time, because you're showing your kids then an example of what it's like to be on time. If it is showing what hard work looks like, not work for work's sake, but the impact that you're going to make by putting in hard work is by the example that you're taking as you're moving in that direction. As well as, at least for me, I feel more fulfilled whenever I'm accomplishing the goals in my life of where I've set off to. I personally am not someone who just wants to sit back and let my life go on autopilot. I like being engaged in my life and thereby getting fulfillment.
This is interesting because one of the ideas that I learned this week is that animals, creatures that have a purpose, they are much more happy. I believe it was Joe Rogan speaking about this dog in his house, that his dog took the mission to get rid of all the lizards that appear in a certain wall. And the other dogs, they didn't care for the lizards. But that dog, when the door opened and he just ran to the wall to chase all the lizards out, he was the happiest dog ever because he had a mission. And we as human beings, we feel happier, we feel more joyful when we feel we have a purpose. That is why people that retire, they want to work with something. They get some hobby or some craft that they take care of. People that are housewives, for example, they have some craft that they might like, or several crafts. This is very related to purpose. And I like the way you say it, Michael, like the idea that it is not just like thinking about it. It's being mindful of what you do in your life. It's like, are you conscious? Are you mindful? Are you doing the things that you wish to do on purpose, the way you intended?
Exactly. And I know that the common number is that we use between 8 and 10% of our brain power. And to me, our intellect, our spirit, our emotions, all of that is a huge system that if we're not activating and using it, yes, we're only going to ever use 8% of something. But if I had a huge space to live in, am I only going to use 8% of that? Or am I going to find ways to use all of that space? If I'm going to have a huge amount of money, am I only going to use 8% of that? Or am I going to use the other 92% to actually make an impact and make a movement? To me, it's a matter of challenging myself, because for me, I actually thrive in that challenge of going a little bit extra, going that extra mile, giving 100% of myself. But it's also of the idea within the Toltec studies is live with death in mind. If I were to die tomorrow, how would I be remembered about today? Am I taking actions that's going to have that impact? How will I be remembered? It's part of that legacy aspect for us too. And for me personally, I want to be known as someone who has had an intentional life and made an impact, because that's the direction I was going. I actually had this conversation with my fiance at one point where I had a lot of things going on and I had a very, very full schedule. And she actually sent me this in a text message. She said, I don't feel like a priority. I feel more like an obligation. And she actually sent me the definition of each of those words. She is a huge aspect of my life. I responded with, you're not an obligation, you're a commitment of mine. I'm committed to being in a relationship with you, which is an intentional choice to go from point A to point B with someone. An obligation to me is something that I feel put upon myself. That's the underlying meaning for me, the contextual meaning. So I reiterated to her, you are a commitment. I'm committed to you and to what we're creating. So this is a real personal thing for me. It's not an obligation. I don't beat myself every time I've got to do that thing. It is that I'm consciously making a choice of I want to go from here to there by this time.
That's very interesting. The idea of a relationship, the commitment in a relationship, it is, for me, it is a commitment of ownership. I was seeing a video from Tilswan on containment. And it is this idea that the role women expect from men is the role of containment, the role of making her safe, like providing for her to feel comfortable, feel safe and everything. And it is a big conversation, but this is not about a possession. It is more about ownership. When you feel you own a car or a bike, you have a relationship with that thing where you take care of it, you know? It's like a piece of you. You don't want it to be stolen. You keep it in a safe place. You clean it. You make the maintenance so it works. Okay. It's this ownership. It's like when you have a tree, when you have a farm, when you have animals that you take care of. You take care of those animals, cultivate them. And the relationship you cultivate, the commitment is the commitment to the cultivation of the relationship, which is very cool, which is very, very nice. I think that commitment, Michael, in relationships and in everything, they are very related to a book. I heard the audiobook. I didn't read it. It is The Compound Effect from Darren Hardy. The idea is that what matters is what compounds over time, and that we don't see much difference for a lot of time. But then suddenly it's like an exponential effect where things just escalate. Like you're smoking a cigar, you don't die from smoking one cigar or a pack of cigars. But if you smoke 2 packs of cigars every day for like 20, 40 years, you have serious problems in your body. It's the compound effect. Commitment has a lot to do with this thing of the accessing this compound effect, right?
Absolutely. And I certainly think the compound effect is huge. There's also this concept around the grit necessary in order to accomplish something. That's to me what the commitment about is as well, is that as you challenge yourself to actually do something, that there's going to be a spot that there's going to be a dip. In fact, there was a book as well, I think it's called The Dip, that's similarly about this, is it's going to be easy going. And then there's this dip where all of a sudden things get hard, which is when many people quit. And that's when things start getting exponential. We just had our summit on Saturday talking about elevating your game. And Tony Watley talked about the idea of when you're putting content out like this, that the first 6 months, when people first come in, they're really excited and they like and they share and they talk about it. But then there's this period at about 6 months where things go quiet and people are watching you in silence. The commitment is actually getting past that silent stage. The commitment to me is what's going to help you through that next stage, knowing that at 12 months is when people are really going to start engaging again. At the 18-month mark is when people are really starting to see that you have the discipline to follow through on it rather than it just being the next shiny thing. So the commitment is also to me about that is I'm heading in this direction. My commitment is to go there, and that these things that are distractions can actually fall off. There's a power to me in the commitment, knowing that I'm heading in this direction regardless of what other distractions come up, because this is important to me. I've defined to the universe, this is important to me. Doesn't mean there won't be the availability of many distractions along the way. In fact, I feel that that's part of, kind of the personal subconscious test of, do you really want that bad enough that you're willing to go through these distractions or these barriers or these obstacles and overcome that and get to the other side?
And this idea, it relates. Can I share my screen, Michael? Am I allowed? So the idea here is very interesting because this relates with what you say. The buyer journey, I talk a lot about the buyer journey, and it's a very abstract concept. It's not something that is really like so tangible that you can explain easily. But this is a buyer journey that Sasha Strauss talks about what he calls the hero generation, which is this new generation that was raised immersed into digital. And in this idea, he builds this hero's journey. And you make questions like, how do they exist? How do they learn? What do they know? What do they do not know? And when you're going to tell the history of a product, you need to go into those things, because sometimes you and the user don't know about what is out there that they are not aware about. They don't think that there are things out there that they are not aware about. And then you get to the top, and then there is this big dip, which is the challenges. Like, okay, but we are companies from like many years of experience, and now we have to talk to an evolved consumer, which is active 25/8, which is raised gamer. That's why cyber is a game, because our users are game raised. We are going to be an amazing project. This is like the dip, but the idea is that everywhere from where you are to a place, there is always going to be a dip of challenges, a dip of things that you don't know how to deal with, that present a problem to you. And again, I love those references. They are silly, but I love them. In the movie of Netflix, the Netflix movie, The Love and Monsters, which is like the giant insects one, the guy tells to the protagonist, he says like this, kid, there is only a few mistakes out there for you to commit. If you manage to survive those, you'll be okay. It's the idea of this dip. This dip, it is what frustrates many people when they commit with something and they just start facing challenge after challenge. They don't understand that this is a normal process on exploring. And they also don't understand that there are so little challenge, like such a few challenges. There are a few challenges on the way that they need to get used to. And if they get used to with those possible mistakes, they will be okay for this rise here on the right side of the screen, which is like all the good things that happen when you engage with the hero gen, which is the case of this journey that Strauss is talking about. You can take out the image, the idea of the past challenges that people face, and they are usually few and known.
Got it. Yeah, it's that idea of there are critical choices for you to learn from, and others are for lessons along the way. But within my coaching practice, it's about the crossroads. There are certain times whenever you could actually take the high road or the low road, and which way you take is going to have a huge impact on where you're going to be next, on whether you're going to actually make it to the top. And it sounds like that's kind of like your key challenges that you need to learn to overcome, is making that discernment of the choice that you make. And unfortunately, our lives are filled with thousands of choices, but there's those key ones that are really important.
Are you talking about choosing your challenges, Michael?
I would say that it is potentially choosing your challenges, yes, but it's also choosing the solution. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, and just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not worth it. There's this opportunity of choosing the right path for where you want to go. Not necessarily that it's your right or my right, but is it their right for the path that they're going to take? So that to me is what the commitment is about, is I'm going there. This to me is the most straight line to get there, though it is a matter of, it's not a straight path. It is the straightest path to get there. But knowing that you have that commitment out there, that vision you've created for your life, for that aspect of your life, even potentially, is knowing that that's going to lead you to where you want to go, to who you see yourself being in the future, if that's in your career, if that's in your relationship, if that's in your personal health, your emotional area, whatever category it is. Sometimes we have to do a deep dive on one. And when we make the commitment, is knowing the impact it could potentially have on the other spectrum of our life. If I want to work 90 hours a week, that may do really well for my bank account, may do fantastic for my career. But what are my relationships going to look like? Am I going to physically be in a state where I can actually deliver 100% on that? Can I do that for a week? Probably. Can I do that for a year? Probably not. I'm going to be a shell of a human being, and all the people that I'm actually doing all that work for are gone. Looking at the patterns and of the commitments on where, if it's going to take you to the right place, is also in the preparation phase, seeing the potential impact that path is going to take, that commitment's going to take. It's not just the big commitments either. It's also the small ones.
What do you see as the small commitments that one can take that will greatly change their lives?
Some of the biggest small commitments that I've seen have a huge impact on my life is getting enough sleep at night. It's something relatively small. Find out what you need in order to thrive, not just survive, because anyone can survive on 3 hours of sleep for a day or two in a row. But doing that on a consistent basis is one of those small commitments. So it's actually one of my sacred choices, one of the 12 things that I commit to accomplishing every day, is get 7 hours of sleep, because that's what I know I need. Some people it's 6, some other people it's 8. Very small commitment, and setting yourself up to succeed at that. So don't plan something for midnight if you know that you actually have to be up at 7 o'clock in the morning for something that's going on. That's one small commitment that will have that compound effect over time that you talked about. The first couple of days, maybe even the first couple of weeks, you won't see it. But then after you've been doing it consistently for 2 or 3 months, you have that one night where you're up till 4 o'clock in the morning and are up at 7 o'clock in the morning right after that, and you feel like a zombie. The whole rest of your day, at least for me, that the rest of that day I'm lethargic, and the day after that has even more of an impact, regardless of whether I get 7 hours of sleep in between. So it's those little small choices, those little small commitments to myself and my own self-care that has a huge impact. I know a lot of people talk about that. I've personally experienced that. I'm in IT by profession up to this point, and had many of those 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning type of nights, because that's when no one is using the system. That's when I could do the work. But I was a zombie for the 2 or 3 days afterward and was useless to do anything else. But hey, I got that thing done at 4 o'clock in the morning. And the question really is it worth it?
I got you.
So is there one thing in particular that small commitment that's made a huge impact in your life?
A way where small commitments have made a huge impact in my life. Mm. I would say, Michael, that it is not so much that the things were small, they were usually big efforts, but I was naive. That's what I would say. I would say that I was naive, that I didn't thought that I was going to need to put so much effort as was actually necessary. Like, for example, when I decided that I would learn English, I was in a classroom. I'm from Brazil, and people here don't usually speak English. Even sometimes when tourists we met, they surprisingly ask me, why don't people here speak Portuguese? Like, they speak English. And I'm like, I don't know, it's by design for some reason. Some people have an interest. And the idea is that, I decided, I was in a classroom, and the teacher, she came and she said, hey guys, today we're going to learn the verb to have. And I turned to my friend, and I was like, he was skinny. I was the crazy. He was skinny. And I was like, hey, skinny, like, we are not going to learn ever English here. Like, when it's not verb to be, it's verb to have. And he was like, yeah, like crazy. Like, of course, we are not going to learn English ever. And I'm like, no, I'm going to learn English. And he's like, no, you never will. And I was like, I will learn English. Are you coming with me or not? And he was like, no, like, go. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn it. And then I just decided every day I was involved with something related to English. When I was going to play a game, I just didn't play in the Portuguese server. I was going to play in the English server. And sometimes people from Brazil, they realized I was Brazilian. And they were like, hey, you speak Portuguese. Why are you making me speak in English? And I was like, I just speak in English here. And that's the idea, the commitment of just saying, I'm going to do it. Like, and don't care, like what you say, don't care of how are you going to do it? I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But is it possible? It doesn't matter if it is challenging. It might be challenging. It might be greatly challenging. What you need challenging goals for yourself, because that's how we grow. The idea is that, is it humanly possible? Is it possible? Is it feasible? If it is feasible, you can take a shot, like you can commit on moving in that direction. I think that is a key, Michael, on commitment, is committing in moving in a certain direction. Doesn't that relate with what we are talking about?
Absolutely. That's actually the key point, I think, about, to me, the commitment is not that I'm going to commit to thinking about, not that I'm going to commit to planning to, I'm going to commit to take action, that there is an action I'm going to take, that I'm going to be heading in that direction. It's when you get off the couch or get out of the treadmill of what you're doing and try something different. That to me is actually where the commitment is so important, because there's plenty of knowledge out there to gain. I want to share wisdom, which to me is actually having the knowledge, acting on it, and getting a lesson from it. That to me is what a lot of what I'm bringing to the table is. I'm not going to go read a book and say, hey, I read this in a book, because I might as well just hand you the book. But instead I can say, I read this, I did this, this was my outcome, and then I did it again, and this was my outcome, and then I did it again, this was my outcome. And that to me is the lessons that can be shared from person to person. It's why I'm involved in quests on Mind Valley. It's why I'm involved in the Lifebook program, is as we're sharing our wisdom is where we grow, when we're taking the challenge of moving out of our comfort zone. Because to me, which is commonly said, is growth is out of your comfort zone. I know that you're actually working with the Habit of Ferocity right now, and he talks a lot about challenging yourself to take that extra step. I know we talked about this last time, I believe, but it's that idea of if you're going to go out jogging, that you sprint up the hills to train your body to be willing to take on the bigger challenges. That's not just physical, though. That's also emotional, that's also intellectual, and that's also spiritual, that you're willing to take on the bigger challenges. When the challenges come up, you hit them head on and go through them rather than stopping whenever the challenge comes up. So some of that's in the preparation phase, but that's when you're thinking about it. That's when you're collecting data. That's actually when you're understanding the problem. Commitment is when action begins. I know that if I were to sprint uphill when I'm out walking, that's something that's up here. I know it. Whenever I go out and do it, whenever I've made the commitment to do that every time, is when it actually becomes an emotional and a spiritual experience where then I can grow. I can certainly visualize where I want to go, and that's creating the destination. But until I start taking action towards that, it's still a dream, not a vision.
This conversation that we are having, in some points that you mentioned here and there, it made me remember of actually two laws. First, I remember of the law of resonance. At some point when you spoke, I believe the idea of committing, it has a lot to do to when you have an identity, you really committed with it. And I have a nice example for that. And the other was the law of transmutation, because you spoke a lot about action, like moving in a certain direction, and how the law of transmutation is actually action, taking action, because when you take action, you transform energy. I remember a story from, I don't remember the name of the guy. I just remember that when he make his SLTs, it is SLTs, right?
It's the SATs or the LSAT, depending on what you're going to.
SAT. Okay. When he did his SATs, he actually was not a good student. He made the test. We received the note. And when he received the notes, he was like, him and his mother, there's something wrong. And they were like, something happened, something wrong. And he called there. He said, hey, there's something wrong with my test. And they say, what is the problem? He says, I took 1400. And they were like, okay, we're going to check on it. And they checked and they say, no, it's okay. It's your test. Like, you took 400. And I guess this is a high score or something, because he went back to the college, to the school, and his teachers, they started to treat him different. And he started to think like, hey, I'm not going out of the class because I took 1400 on the SATs. Like, who takes 1400 on the SATs stays the whole class and make questions and take notes. Don't lose time with this and with that. And then he started making a lot of changes in his life that he assumed was better aligned with that 1400. And everybody in his life started treating him more aligned with a person that takes that 1400. And then later, many years later, he received a call from the organization that does the SATs. And they actually told him that from time to time, they make a revision. And that revision showed that his test was actually wrong. There was a mistake there. And he was one of 7 people that had like some mistake. No, there was a number. And they explained to him, they excused him. But he went to Ivy League University. He became successful and all those things. But he says the following: people think that my life changed when I got 1400 on the SAT by mistake. But in truth, my life changed when I started behaving like someone that takes 1400 on the SAT. So this is the thing of the law of resonance. You identify with something, and then it vibrates out and comes back to your reality.
Got it. So that's a lot about what vision work is really about when you're really talking about making that commitment. When we're talking about doing vision work or vision mastery, there's several different words for the same thing. It's not just that's the goal. But when you start knowing that that's the goal that you're heading to, in your head, you start thinking about a person who has that, a person who is doing that. What are they doing? What are they thinking? How are they acting? And those are the steps you take. It's, if you're looking at the law of attraction, it's about taking the actions that you're inspired to do. The law of resonance is actually very similar to that, is that if you're acting in a particular way, It really kind of comes down to another phrase I've heard before, is you attract to you people who you are, not who you want to be. So if you believe that you are that person who belongs in an Ivy League school, and that's the way you're acting, that's the type of people that you attract to yourself. If you start attracting people who are negative and naysayers and putting you down, you got to look at your beliefs about yourself more than about them. So when you're making that commitment of where you're going, it needs to be something that is humanly possible, yes, but it's also needs to be in alignment with who you think you can become, and envision yourself in that spot. I am here now. And that's when it starts getting created. That's when it starts manifesting in your life. In fact, many people will say that's exactly what that story you mentioned was. I started acting as if I scored 1,400 on the SATs, and that's when my life changed. So my challenge to you is, instead of waiting for the universe to tell you that you are that, start setting that intentionally for yourself. And if you are having trouble getting there, surround yourself with people who will help you visualize that in yourself. That made a huge impact on my life, on people who I trusted, who I could be authentic with, and supported me to become who I wanted. Huge. It makes a difference. And then for your law of transmutation, taking that inspired action, that one action can lead to opening more doors. Take one of those paths that leads to different doors, and it will actually take you on the trajectory towards where you're trying to create. But it does require, transmutation requires some sort of catalyst, something that's going to change that. And if it's your actions, if it's your thoughts, if it's your emotions, if it's the people that you're surrounding yourself with, the words that you're using, the way that you're using your words, all of those are ways to transmute your life, to take it from this state to a different state. Now, that it could be positive, could be negative, could be whichever direction you want it to go, but are you taking the action to move it to where you want it to be? That's why the commitment and why all of this is so important. If I'm driving a car and I just let go of the wheel, what's going to happen? Even someone with no hands will use their leg to drive the car. But I see so many people who that's the way that they're living their life. So their hands off the wheel is, this is what my job says I need to do, so I guess I need to do that. This is what my friends think I need to do, so I'm guessing I'm going to do that. Is very different than saying, I'm in the driver's seat of my car. Other people have actually said it, I'm driving my bus. If you want to be on my bus, get on, but it leaves at 6:00. Is be at the helm, be at the steering wheel of your life. That's what the commitment about is to me, and why this process is so important.
This relates a lot as well with the idea of the first level of consciousness. There is a video from Vishen Lakiani on consciousness. I believe it's a crash course on consciousness, something like that. He talks about 4 levels of consciousness, and those 4 levels are the victim state, the second level when you start questioning things, the third level is actually when you start to realize that you can change things in your life. Things don't need to be the way your culture believes it to be. You might decide it. Things that you live by maybe were decided by people that are no smarter than you, like Steve Jobs said. You understand that you can shape your reality. And the fourth level is when you understand how to do that, that you need to become the thing that you wish to attract and things like that. It is even interesting because while you were speaking, Michael, I remember about my experiences with relationship and women and things like that. Sometimes we have this ideal partner we wish to have in our lives, and we don't question very much. What is the person? How is the person that this person wants to have by their side? There is several levels. Like there is a level where you start questioning and understanding that you need to have a picture of a partner for yourself, because you need to know what you wish to attract. You need to have a direction. And then there is the other exercise, which is to understand who this person wish to have by their side, so you can become that, attract that for you. It talks a lot about direction, purpose, vision, a future. Another thing that I felt saying when you were speaking is of immediate gratification. A lot of the things that we do are related to things that we wish to acquire now, benefits that we harvest now. We need to consider more about the future and things like that.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I was actually listening just a little while ago about Simon Sinek talking about much the same thing, especially about the millennial generation, that it's all about instant gratification. It's about the instant dopamine hit, if it's the likes on Facebook or if it's the text messaging where you actually want to be noticed whenever you're reaching out. That instant gratification thing it's something that we've trained the next generation to require. Unfortunately, so many things that are important to us, the impact that we make is not something that we instantaneously can actually see the results from. So I just, in our talk about game, I talked a lot about strategy. And strategy, yes, is looking out that long vision of where you want to go. But in order for me to keep my motivation to create that strategy, I've got to break it down into the smaller pieces so I can have that instant win and another instant win and another instant win, to have those smaller chunks to get me to that longer vision. Having a long-term destination is really important, but you also have to know what the next step is so you can accomplish that, learn from it, iterate, take the lesson that you learned from that. Even if you don't accomplish it 100%, there's still a lesson in it, so you can then take that momentum to the next thing. It's building your own gratification into it, knowing that if I am learning something new, I need to make those small steps in order to get there. I'm right now learning Japanese, which is really difficult because it's a completely different character set, a completely different mindset, a completely different culture. And I cannot even come close to having a conversation with someone. I'm learning the characters and a little bit of the sounds. And I know I'm not going to be proficient. I know that you learned English by immersing yourself in that. I'm not there yet. Instead, I've got to find my small wins because I've learned a little bit of Spanish over time. I know English, and I'm an ignorant American and think that I only need to learn English. But I still want to be able to have that conversation with someone from a different culture, and that's will require me to take the small steps of learning about the culture and why something is said the way it is said, as well as the words that are used and the character, which is so a huge part of the history and the culture that goes there. But it's not something I'm going to learn overnight. Each of us has, I know that you've done the 3 most important questions, and that was actually one of the things that I wanted to learn was a different language, both Japanese and Chinese, which for me, from a left to right kind of learning perspective to now go top to bottom, is a completely different mindset. I know I can take from my awareness of my surroundings. My ex-brother-in-law took an aptitude test on language about 25 years ago. And they told him, Spanish is easy and we don't think we can even teach you Spanish. And he said, please just give me a shot. Put me in the program and let me learn. Became top in his class in learning Arabic and then turned around and learned Chinese. Also probably would have been top in his class, but the aptitude test, similar to that SATs that you mentioned before, said, you have no skills in this area. But he dedicated himself to doing it by taking the small steps and immersing himself in the concepts. If he can be tested at only being able to do this much and actually did this, I think I can more than willing to take on the challenge of actually taking that next step and then grow from there.
Exactly. Language is culture. There are many people here that they pay expensive courses to learn English, and they don't learn it. They know rules and stuff, but they don't speak it. And if you want to speak with them, they feel unsure, don't actually like to engage with the idea. And I believe it's because it's not teach the culture. They don't teach the culture. It's like I even saw people that technically know how to speak English and then go to a country and realize that they don't understand the people. And they got surprised. And I was like, yeah, because I had this unfair advantage in the way I learn English, which is I was immersed in the culture. I was talking with people that were playing the games and they were like exposing me to their culture and the people that I reached and things like that. Later, I learned the rules. People compliment my English. I don't think it is so good. I think it can improve a lot. And even this question of culture, it is deeply related with what you commit to, your reality and everything, because it's a language. One of the reasons I used to think, Michael, that we should have only English in the world, except one language. Let's make it English and it's okay. But then we will lose a lot of culture on those other languages, like because there are things that you can't say in a different language, or there are things that you say a little bit different. They have a little bit different flavor to it than they would have in their translation to other languages, which is very, very cool. And you spoke as well about the 3 most important questions as well, which is a very incredible tool. I would call it artifact. In cyber, we have those artifacts, Michael, which are items that have a transformative power. And the 3MIQ, they are an artifact because they can help you transform your life. And they are the 3 most important questions, which is what are the experiences that I wish to live in life? I wish to have experiences as a musician. So I wish to learn how to play the guitar and to play the sax and to play the piano and make some fun music with my friends. I wish to know the Europe and things like that. And then there is the second question, which is growth, which is how do I need to grow from where I am today in order to be able to live those experiences that I put in the first question. And then after you reach your growth and you live your experiences, or while you do that, but as you grow in order to live your experiences, you get to grow better than yourself, bigger than yourself, and you contribute, which is the third question. How do I wish to contribute to society, to the community, in order to live life with purpose? What are my purposes? You are making commitments, right, Michael? You are setting up purposes in three areas, which is experiences, growth, and contribution. Can we talk a little bit about this commitment related to contribution, Michael? Because I think that this idea of establishing goals that are bigger than yourself, they are a key factor on living life in a fulfilled way, I would say like that.
In some of the other work that I do, we talk about your context and how big your context is. You know, what your commitments are to. Are they at the bottom of the funnel or are they at the top? The bottom of the funnel, they talk about being the suck hole. That's actually where you are personally, individually. And when you can be self-absorbed, which is different than actually growing yourself. And each tier above that, as your context gets bigger, you have an impact on a bigger part of the world. So your commitment to me is measured by your level of context. Am I working with my family, my team, my community, the group that I'm involved in? Is it my nation or is it the world? And when we're actually working out at this bigger ring of the funnel is when we're having the largest impact and our context is bigger. Now, when we actually get to that level of commitment is certainly a very different perspective than when you're at the bottom of the suck hole, when you're looking to grow yourself. I think that we talk about in Lifebook a lot about being self-actualized, being the fullest version of yourself, discovering who that is, and then exemplifying it. That's so that I can have an impact to help others actually self-actualize themselves. If that is my family, my close peers, is it my larger community, or is it the world? To me, the commitments have to start when you asked about the small commitments. Those start here at the bottom of the suck hole, when we're actually making commitments around ourselves and growing ourselves. Even the Lifebook categories start off with that is what are the things that I'm going to do to grow myself. But as you get bigger and bigger with your commitments, it actually has a bigger impact on the people around you and showing them that it's welcome to be the fullest version of yourself. So I don't believe that you become something different. I feel like you discover your true self and show that and be willing and courageous enough to do that, which can be really hard for many people when our society, our community, our religion, our family has said, nope, you need to be this, and put a ceiling on you when you know that you're actually built for bigger things. I know for you, it's actually making opportunities for people who deserve it. And many times it's working through that mindset.
Deserves an opportunity.
Yes. So it's a matter of helping people break that ceiling of where the farthest they think they can go. But the limitations are set by us. We may allow other people to set it for us, but in the end, it's still us who sets that ceiling. So can I only impact myself? No. I'm in a community with Elevation Mindset. I was in a community with the men's team. I'm in a community with coaching and with Mind Valley and with Lifebook. Those communities I am helping and assisting to grow by how I show up, and I'm committed to serving those communities in some ways to, if you will, show them how it can be done, but also to encourage them to be on their own path, to become the most fully realized version of themselves.
I think that this idea of communities, Michael, is something really important that we kind of lost track of because the community are very important. The community is the emergence. And by emergence is what emerges from the gathering of something. Like a colony of ants, it emerges from the hundreds of thousands of ants inside of it. Like the bee colony, the beehive, it emerges from all the bees. The bees alone, they do some things, but they don't get even close of what they can do together. They build a hive, they produce wax, they produce honey, they pollinize trees. They do a lot of things, produce propolis and a lot of other things, which they can't do alone. But we as humanity, we are in a problem, which is the challenge is the following. Inevitably, we emerge because we are together. We have cities, we have all those things, so we emerge inevitably. If we are together, we end up emerging. But we are emerging unconsciously and in a sick way, let's say it like that, in a not a natural way. What this produces is only consequences to the environment because we produce pollution and waste and all those things that are killing the life on Earth. And the idea is that we need to culturally, in a cultural level, and this is a proposition for cyber as well, in a cultural level, to rebuild these models of living, these ways of living. One of the things that we wish to restore is the community, because we can't be so individualistic. We can't be so much into the bottom. I never thought it like that, Michael. But if there is a pyramid, okay, we can't be so much at the bottom, because when we are so much focused on the bottom, we think so much in what we are lacking, it tips as well into the idea of acceptance. You were speaking, Michael, and I was thinking, oh, this has to do with the need for acceptance. Like, I need to fit into this box, otherwise I will not be accepted. This is something that we need to change into our families. The first thing that we need to make sure we get right into our families is that everybody is welcome, that they are welcome. Because I notice every community that I get, the people that get into, they are so unsure. Are they welcome? Are they not? And this leads to inauthenticity when they are not committed to who they are, to who they decided to be, all those things. But if we fix that, if we treat people as welcome and rebuild our communities, I think that we would be a long, long way in the journey of living a better field, sustainable, and all those nice things that we search in our life. Communities are very, very important. How do you see the commitment with our communities, Michael? How it is today and how it could improve?
So I certainly see the value of that commitment to communities, as well as the communities that are accepting. It's actually one of the biggest things on why I stayed as long as I did inside of a men's circle. So on that men's team, one of the tenets of their code of honor is embrace all men. Every man is welcome here. Bring what you need to here so that you can actually practice that and take that out to the world. So I very much agree with the idea of communities being accepting and supporting each other to be the biggest version of themselves. So for me, communities are a huge aspect of how we grow. I know if we were to roll back the clock thousands of years, that it was very much a tribal society, and being, outside the norm for the tribe, that you were actually exiled, and that means death. And now that there's over 7 billion people on the planet, us building those tribes, those communities is easier, especially with the technology that's available for a lot of the world. So I think that those kind of communities are key for how we do grow beyond what we're at. Family should be, in most people's minds, where we get that acceptance. But I personally believe is that if you don't get that somewhere, create it somewhere else. Find that chosen family. I've seen so many people that at this point are okay with finding their chosen family because that's where they're accepted. So for me, the elevation mindset community is one of those. It's a growth-minded community to help people elevate in their lives. The men's team that I was on, where one of the tenets of the code of honor is embrace all men, where we're supporting men to be authentically themselves, practice that in a safe environment so you can actually be the best version of yourself out there in the world. The same thing is true for Mind Valley, where we're learning how to be better human beings, if that's actually through lucid dreaming or reading or our emotional path or our energy circles, but it's a community based on acceptance of where you are. And same thing is true for the Life Book community as well, where this is a framework not to tell you how to live, but this is a framework that you can use in order to build your life and create it to be better. So those are some of the communities that I've engaged in so that I can be in that accepting environment. I do have a overall pretty solid family, but I've grown my family to be bigger than that. Working with you in this, you're an extension of my chosen family. We've created something here that I value, which is why I show up. How do I then practice that showing up in those communities to show up outside of my communities? Because that to me is where there's a larger worldwide growth. Instead of it being exclusive to this community, is be an ambassador out to the world of another way to be less polarizing and more helping others rise to the highest version that they can get. I think it's a beautiful, in fact, I was just having that conversation a little bit earlier today of building smaller nodes of communities who actually can see the integral viewpoint of actually seeing the high level ideas of how we grow and how we transform and how we become better. and then having each one of those nodes actually connected in a network with other communities so that we can have a dialogue of being better human beings. Not better this culture, not better that race, not better this religion, not better this gender. It really is about being a better worldwide community by having respect for others, by having the idea of, yes, we are looking to serve a community. We're here to actually head in a particular direction. Let's make the best of that.
I understand what you say, Michael, when you're speaking about community and like committing outside of your community. I actually have like, I believe I showed you this diagram. There is a diagram I made about the culture and things like that. And in the external layer of the culture of the human being, I'm still structuring this thought. You have like yourself, and then in the external, you have your peers, which might be your family, your community, which is your tribe, like your strong bonds and even weak bonds, people there that you don't know too much. But usually the community is the strong bonds, the people that you have a deep relation with, that you depend on, that you coexist. Then there is society. We forget sometimes of this idea of we as a species, because the bees, they behave in a way, they have a purpose as a species, and we have a purpose as humans. I believe this purpose was kind of forgotten. It is a little bit forgotten. We are disconnected from the world. I don't want to be giving like my polemics points of view here, but there is a great problem there. We also need to take a look beyond that, which is the environment, the biosphere, the life that we have on Earth. We need to have a commitment with that as well. We need to have a commitment with ourselves, with our peers, with our community, with society, with our society, with humanity, with the biome, life on Earth. And then there is the layer that we don't actually need to commit a lot with, which is the energy, the matter layer, like this side of things, that we are the universe. We are the universe having an experience, an opportunity to experience itself, which is something exciting and amazing. But this leads me to think about the habits, effortlessly doing something, like commit to the point. And this I believe this is a good point to tie up our conversation, Michael, because if you commit to the point where you identify with the thing so deeply that you become it, and this is a instant thing, we act like it is a big journey, but this idea of identifying and becoming is instantly, and then I build upon that, which I became. When you incorporate that into a way where in your mind you are an athlete, so you go to the gym because you're an athlete, you eat well, you are an athlete. It's another level of like, it's not looking to the outcome, it's looking to who am I, who I identify with. You commit so much that you incorporate that into something that you are, and you do that into habits. Do you have any thoughts on that, Michael? The relationship between commitment and habits. Does this relate very well to you as it does to me?
Sometimes for me, I think that habits are the things that we fall back on rather than the things that we explicitly choose. So we talked about this a little bit in discipline. Is the discipline is doing that thing that you need to do because you want the outcome. The habits are the things that you actually do almost unconsciously as you fall back on. So as you become that identity, your habits do shift. The question really is it the identity that shifts first, or is it the habits that shift first? And it's unfortunately, it's one of these chicken and egg kind of concepts where if you are picturing yourself as an athlete or an entrepreneur or as a good father or as a good mother or a good child or whatever that is, your habits will be different. Kind of coming back to what you originally talked about the habits of the person who got a 1400 on the SATs for their score, their habits changed because their identity of themselves changed.
And I believe that it might come up either way. It might start with the habits. It might start with the identity that you wish to choose for yourself. But I believe it's easier if you start with the identity. If you get the identity first, it's easier for you to relate with the habits, and you will probably reach areas and aspects that you wouldn't think of, because you are identifying with that thing, and then you just resonate, and it impacts a lot of areas of your life.
So I very much agree that it has to be a layering, a stacking effect, because you have to identify with something, create the discipline until it becomes a habit, which then you identify as being more of that, which then you have to, then your habits become different as you go to the next level. And it does stack, and it does get us that exponential growth. It gives us that possibility for opportunity as we get the compound effect as time goes on. It is many, many different layers as we're making the commitments to who we want to be. That really is the core thing when it comes down to the commitments. With the men's team, the first tenet of the Code of Honor is commitment before ego, which means that my commitment is to my community more so than it is to grow myself. I'm going to grow in the process as I learn that. But how do I serve that community? How do I actually commit to being someone? How do I commit to discovering someone and then be that a majority of the time?
Awesome.
So Bruno, thank you very much for being part of this conversation with me. It's been awesome talking to you about commitment and how our viewpoints are a little bit different, but are so much more the same around commitment. So this is the Elevate Your Best podcast. My name is Michael Danclough of Elevate Your Best.
My name is Bruno Martins from the Cyber Journey. And thank you to Michael. This is very interesting. I love the ideas and the ways that we go through. I think that we need more of those conversations, we and everybody. There are thoughts that we need to have in order to just reach a better ways of living, like in commitment, things like preparation, and all the things that we are going to talk about here. They are very key factors into living a fulfilling life. Bye-bye.